welcome to my room and welcome to my channel. Today in this video we're going to start a new series dedicated to Magic the Gathering. This is a special series. This is the MTG4FUN crossover edition, in which I'm going to bring all my favorite TV series, anime series, movies, films, sagas into the world of Magic the Gathering and create new decks of cards, original cards that have never been created before, that you can find only here on my channel. I'm going to make new expansions for this incredible game. You know, I'm a big fan of Magic the Gathering, and what I really like about this game is that every 3 months we get new expansions, hundreds of new cards with new characters, new creatures, new heroes, and new effects and new abilities, and that is really, really cool. So I decided that I will start creating my own expansions. And today we are going to take a look at the results of my first experiment. Here I have printed all the cards, and they cost me a bit of money. I spent something like €5 to print these nice cards here, but it was definitely worth it. And here we've got some very cool cards that I have created from scratch. I'm going to cut this card and I'm going to create my first custom deck of Magic the Gathering. And you see, we've got lots of cards here I have created over the last few months. And we're going to take a look at all these cards in the next part of this video. These cards, they make up the deck of the Bible. Look at the book that I've got here. This is the illustrated book of Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible. And the last few months, I decided to read the books of the Bible. I started with this nice book here. This book is really special because you see here we've got illustrations for all the things that happen in the first 50 chapters of the Genesis. And this book was really helpful to get me started with the Bible, because at the beginning I was having some difficulties because of the language. Because the language that you got in the Bible is complicated, to say the least. And here, using this book and the illustrations, I was able to get myself more accustomed to the language that you got in the Bible. And then once I completed this book, it was just a breeze to read through all the other books of the Bible. I tried to cover most of the Bible, most of the stories. I focused on the main stories that we got in all the books of the Bible. And while I was reading these books, I was also watching a very nice animated series called In the Beginning, which came out in the 90s. This series here was made by the Italian television and the Japanese television, and it came out in the 90s. It's a really nice series. The artwork that you're going to see here on these cards comes from the series here that I've just mentioned, In the Beginning. The artwork is pretty nice. I mean, I really like this series. The animation that you got in this series is not like modern animation, because this series came out in the 90s, but I really like watching old school animation. And here you see we've got some really cool cards. Now, it's gonna be a bit of a nightmare to cut all these cards and put them into the sleeves and create the cards, but you know, I really enjoy doing this, you know, and I'm really excited here that I'm looking at my first custom set for Magic the Gathering, my first expansion for this game. You know, I thought that I would start from the beginning, from the very beginning, and here we got the Genesis and all the stories of the Bible that we can find here on these cards. This first deck is dedicated entirely to the Bible. So if you also want to start with the Bible, I mean, the Bible is a very nice book. I would strongly suggest you read the Bible if you have the time. If you don't have the time to read the Genesis and all the other books that you got in the Bible, you can just watch this series here that is really well done. I also really like that this series is really accurate and faithful to what really happens in the Bible. It's a very faithful adaptation of the stories that you got in the Bible. And it doesn't really matter whether you believe in the stories or whether you don't, okay? That doesn't really matter because these stories are really precious. These stories are thousands of years old. These stories existed even before the birth of Jesus Christ. They represent a cultural treasure for the entire humanity. These are some of the oldest stories that have been out there, that humanity has ever possessed since the dawn of time, since the origins, okay, of mankind. And it is with this spirit that you should approach the reading of the Bible, okay? So it doesn't really matter whether you believe in these stories or whether you don't, okay? That's not a problem, all right? Now remember also that when I started reading the Bible, I had many doubts and lots of questions. I'm the kind of person who asks lots of questions. And I was asking myself questions regarding the Bible and the events that take place in the Bible, like why why were the Israelites enslaved by the Egyptians in the first place, and why Moses had to liberate the Hebrew people, the Israel people, and then travel across the desert for 40 years to reach the promised land. 40 years, that is quite a journey. Or why was the temple of Jerusalem destroyed and what happened afterwards? Or what is the meaning of the story of Cain and Abel? Why did Cain kill Abel and what is the message there in the Bible? Or why did God decide to kill all the human beings and the animals with the great flood except for Noah and his family? Or why Adam and Eve were driven away from the Garden of Eden? And what is the Garden of Eden? You see, I had so many questions here in my mind that were kind of upsetting me. And now, reading all the books of the Bible and watching this series, I've been able to solve all of my doubts and answer all of my questions. And now I'm finally a happy person. So this was my introduction for this video. Remember to subscribe, hit the like button and comment down below. Let me know what you think about this first video for this new series. Remember that if you want to watch more, if you want to see my future expansions for this game, remember to stay tuned and subscribe because there are going to be more episodes for this series that are going to come out in the next months, okay? So now it's time to take a look at the cards. Let's check out together the deck of the Bible! The deck of the Bible. So we're ready now to take a look here at the legendary deck of the Bible, my first deck for Magic the Gathering. This is the first card, the first two human beings on Earth. This card enters the battlefield with this special artifact equipment, coat of skins. This was the first clothing item that was ever made. It was made by God himself and given to Adam and Eve to protect them from the elements, from the rain and the cold. And the Lord God made coats of skins for the man and his woman and he clothed them. You see down here we've got the text that is taken directly from the Bible. That is also a pretty cool feature here of these cards. Then here we've got be fruitful and multiply. Adam and Eve were just supposed to make lots of kids and populate the earth with their offspring. And here with this sorcery spell, you can make lots of tokens. Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. That was the purpose of the existence of Adam and Eve on earth. All they had to do was just make babies. Here we've got the legendary tree of knowledge with its own special token. You see, I've also created some special token cards for some of the cards in this deck. Here we've got the red apple of the original sin. These apples are poisonous, they've got death touch, so you can use the tree of knowledge to create here a bunch of these apples, and you can use these apples to protect your life. And also to destroy the creatures controlled by the opponent. So this was the tree of knowledge from the Garden of Eden, and here we've got the two brothers, Cain and Abel. You know that Cain killed his brother Abel in the Bible, so I wanted to give Cain sort of a negative effect that was focused on killing. Abel instead has got a more positive effect. Whenever you summon a creature, you gain 1 life, and whenever you gain life for the first time, you can summon here a 1/1 white creature token that is a sheep. Alright, so these were Cain and Abel from the Bible. And here we've got more cards for these two characters. The Cain's wrath. And when they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. And here we've got the Cain's mark, which was placed by God himself right on Cain's forehead to tell everybody that he was a murderer, that he killed his own brother. that he did such a despicable thing that cannot be forgiven. Also have this other card here, Mulch. This card is just like a copy of a pretty popular spell in Magic the Gathering, this card here. They've got the same effect, the same name, and the same casting cost. But here in this card, you can see Cain at work. He is a tiller of the soil, so he's working the ground right there. By the sweat of your brow shall you eat your bread, God. Another iconic character in the Bible, this is Noah. Noah also has its own special artifact equipment, the Noah Staff. This card is double-sided. If you control 4 or more creatures, you can transform Noah, and Noah becomes the Noah's Ark. An artifact creature with 4 power and 5 toughness, trample, and all attacking creatures get +1/+1. Then here we also have the sorcery, Good Tidings. Each player gains 3 life and draws a card. Until your next turn, players can't lose life and can't win or lose the game. Azoth's Journey to Babel. This card also has its own special creature token. Azoth, a human with lifelink, 1 power, 1 toughness. This card then transforms into the majestic Tower of Babel. This is a legendary land, just like, the special cards from the set of Ixalan in Magic the Gathering. You can tap this land to create a mana of any color. Then you can try and build the Tower of Babel. Every time an artifact enters the battlefield, you can place a counter here on the Tower of Babel. Then you can decide to sacrifice this land and destroy the tower and deal damage to a creature or player equal to the number of counters that you have been able to place here on the tower. This is pretty much how I try to recreate here the story of the construction and the destruction of the Tower of Babel and the long journey here that Azoth made across the desert to reach the Tower of Babel. Now, Azoth is not a character that is mentioned in the Bible. This character comes from the animated series. And I really like the episode from the animated series that was based here on the Tower of Babel. Then here we've got Abraham, the forefather. He was the founder of the people of Israel. He is a very important man in the Bible. He had some incredible adventures. He was even at the head of an army when he led an expedition to rescue his nephew Lot. He also had 2 wives. His first wife was Sarah, who gave birth to this baby here, Isaac. You may notice here that Sarah is pretty old. She conceived when she was almost 100 years old. Sarah in the Bible is actually barren, so she was not supposed to have any kids. But God decided to bless her. So she was given the great pleasure and the great privilege of becoming a mother at her very old age. And she became the mother of nations. Not just a normal mother, the mother of nations. God told her that through her baby, Isaac, many kings and queens would have come in the future. This is why Sarah became the mother of nations. The second wife of Abraham was Hagar. She was a slave. She gave birth to this young man here, Ishmael, the fine archer. And both Hagar and Ishmael in the Bible eventually are exiled from Abraham's tribe, and Ishmael then founded a new people, the Ishmaelites, who are believed to be the Arabs today. So all the people of Arabic origins should be the descendants of Ishmael, according to the Bible. This card is just like your typical ordeal card in the game of Magic the Gathering. Here we got some examples. These cards come from my personal collection of MTG cards. Then here I would like now to place the 2 stepbrothers side by side. Here we got Isaac, fine soldier, and here we've got Ishmael, fine archer. 2 pretty cool cards. When Isaac enters the battlefield, you can also create here this token creature. This is These are the Isaac's fellow men. It's a token creature human with 2 power, 2 toughness, and vigilance. Whoa. Sorry everybody. Here we've got the ultimate sacrifice. You know that in the Bible, God asks Abraham to sacrifice his son. So he takes his son Isaac to the peak of a mountain, and there he is ready to sacrifice his son to the Lord. But then the Lord stops Abraham and tells him, please do not kill your son for me. And this is the story of the sacrifice of Isaac in the Bible. Now, this card is just like a copy of Fierce Retribution, another instant that you got in Magic the Gathering, a card that already exists in Magic the Gathering. And you see here, it's pretty cool here to see the similarities between these two cards, and also the artwork there that is pretty much the same, the same action scene on these two cards. This is also why I feel like I was destined to create this deck. This was my call, my mission, to create the deck of the Bible for all the fans of Magic the Gathering out there. Here we've got the Messengers of God with their own special token. This is an epic card in the deck. This is a mythic card. These Messengers of God are angels that were sent by God to speak with Abraham and tell him that he was going to become a father at his very old age. He was going to have a son from his wife, Sarah, who was barren. And they also told him that God wanted Abram to circumcise all the men and all the male children in his tribe. So Abraham was actually the first man to practice the circumcision. And here we've got the card for that. The circumcision is a practice that consists of cutting the foreskin. This card is just like this other card here in Magic the Gathering, this figure. They've got the same casting cost and the same ability. The circumcision is still a practice that is still in use today among the Hebrews. And here we've got Lot, Abraham's nephew. I mentioned this character before. I told you that Abraham rescued him. And Lot is a character that is linked also to the story of Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible. You can see right here on these two cards that we got the same character. Here Lot was able to escape the destruction of these two cities with his two daughters. He used to live here in Sodom and Gomorrah in one of his two cities. But then the Lord saved him before he destroyed the cities. This is pretty much a board wipe. You can deal 5 damage to each creature and each planeswalker, but you can also save one of your creature. That creature phases out, so pretty much just like Lot was saved by the Lord. Then here we've got High Priest of Haran. Haran was the name of the land where Abraham used to live with his men before he departed for the Promised Land. You know that in the Bible we've got 2 great journeys. One journey was made by Abraham and his men to the Promised Land, the land of Canaan, and the second great journey was made by the people of Israel when they fled Egypt, guided by Moses, and traveled across the desert to reach the same land, the land of Canaan. And that was the Exodus, which happens in the second book of the Bible, the book of Exodus. Lord Abimelech was a wise king. He was a very wise man. He was not a Hebrew man, but he was still able to speak with God. He had a revelation from God. God spoke with him, and he told him, please do not attack Abraham and his men with your army, because Abraham's tribe is protected by the Lord. They are the chosen people. So since Lord Abimelech was a wise man, he decided to follow God's words, and eventually he did not attack Abraham's tribe. And by doing that, he did not provoke the rage of the Almighty. And this is the story of Lord Abimelech in the Bible. Now we finally get to talk about my favorite story from the Bible, a story that comes from the book of Genesis, the story of Joseph. Here we got the Ring of Stars. This card is just like this other card here in the game. This card is in Italian, but its name is Ring of Oblivion. They've got the same effect, okay? Now this card here, Ring of Stars, you see, this is actually a dream that Joseph had when he was a kid. He saw all the stars, the moon, and the sun bow down to him. Joseph, the dreamer, was destined to become a very important man, and all the people will bow down to him because he was destined to become Zaphenath Paneah, the manager of all granaries in ancient Egypt. Here we also have another card for Joseph. This is the Joseph's Will. Place target creature on the top or bottom of the controller's library and create 2 treasure tokens. So this is Joseph. It is certainly my favorite story in the Bible. Really like the story here. Here we also have a silver goblet. Again, this is related to the story of Joseph. This is a legendary artifact. Target player loses 2 life. Then here we've got Jacob's reckoning. Joseph was one of the 12 sons of Jacob. All of his brothers were really jealous of him, except for Benjamin, who was the youngest of all the 12 sons. Initially, they wanted to kill Joseph, but then they decided to sell him to a group of merchants who were headed for Egypt. And when Joseph came to Egypt, he met Potiphar, the high chamberlain. He was the high chamberlain of the Pharaoh. And Potiphar decided to adopt Joseph, and he became his new father. This is a legendary creature. Creatures your opponent controls enter the battlefield tapped. So you see here, I really try to exploit the ability of tapping other players' creatures. And here we've got Moses. Now, this card always reminds me of Teferi. Every time I look at this card here, I always think of Teferi. Very cool planeswalker in Magic the Gathering. So this card is Moses, Prince of Egypt. Moses initially was, an Egyptian. I mean, he believed to be an Egyptian, but then he found out that his origins were not Egyptian, but he was actually a Hebrew. And then that changed his life completely, and he became Moses the Savior. And his mission became to save the people of Israel from their slavery in Egypt. Ramses, Prince of Egypt. This card enters the battlefield here with its own special artifact vehicle. Right there you can see Ramses that is steering the Egyptian Biga. This vehicle gains haste. It's got crew 1 and first strike with 2 power and 3 toughness. So Ramses can maneuver these Egyptian Biga right on the same turn that he's summoned. We also have another vehicle in this deck, this Egyptian cargo boat. I really like this card here. This is an artifact vehicle with 4 power and 3 toughness, crew 2. When this vehicle attacks, create a treasure token. I really like this card here. Here we've got Slavery, an enchantment aura. This card just represents the hard work that the Israelites had to make during their enslavement in Egypt. Hebrews were only brought into this world to be slaves to Egyptians. Egyptian supervisor. Flogging a Hebrew slave is like flogging a dead horse. Unfortunately for him, this Egyptian supervisor ended up being killed by Moses. And, after this homicide, Moses had to leave Egypt. And on his journey away from Egypt, Moses met God. Right there you can see on this card this burning brush that symbolizes the presence of God. And you can see there Moses that is speaking with God. I'm certain that you have already connected this card here to this other card here. Because you see these cards have got the same name. And also take a look at the artwork there. Some of the cards here that I've made have got some striking similarities here with cards that already exist in Magic the Gathering. And this is why I feel so proud here that I've created these cards. I feel like this was really my mission, to create the deck of the Bible and create these cards here and just show you how cool the game of Magic the Gathering really is. We've got even cards here that we can find, you see, in the Bible. Then eventually Moses comes back to Egypt with his brother, Aaron. And here we've got the two brothers, Moses and Aaron. The Pharaoh was pretty pissed off. Here we've got the card for the Pharaoh of Egypt. There we've got the Pharaoh's rage. Take all your sheep and your cattle and leave Egypt. And you all know what then happened afterwards. We had the plagues of Egypt. And here we've got darkness upon Egypt. After the passing of many years, the Israelites and the people of Egypt were torn apart. For 3 days, Egypt was thrust into darkness. This was just the beginning of the end for the people of Egypt. This is an enchantment with a converted mana cost of 5. This card is a mythic spell in this deck, and this card is really, really powerful. We also have another very powerful card here. This was the first plague of Egypt, Swarm of Nuts. This is sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 and destroy all artifacts. This spell is probably a bit too powerful. So finally, the people now are moving from Egypt and they have started their journey to reach the promised land. The Exodus was long and trying. Then here we've got the pillar of fire. This was placed by God to protect the Israelites as they were running away from Egypt, to protect them from the chasing Egyptians. This is a creature wall with defender, 0 power and 6 toughness. Pretty good creature. The glorious moment in which Moses parts the waters of the Red Sea. In the Bible, this sea is also called the Sea of Reeds. And you can see right there Moses is parting the waters of the sea. And you can see Moses that is doing the same thing also here on this card, the glory of the Almighty. It will be a time when I shall show the people of Israel the glory of the Almighty. Exile target permanent, a very simple effect, but a very powerful one. And now take a look at this card here. Take a good look at this card, okay? Moses climbs Mount Sinai. Now I'm going to leave you 5 seconds to think of any other card that we've got in Magic the Gathering that looks just like this card here, okay? Take a good look at this card, alright? And now let me know down below in the comments if you also thought of this card here. Sejiri Shelter. This is one of my favorite spells from Magic the Gathering because I really, really like the artwork here. And just take a look at these 2 cards. I mean, the similarity again is astonishing. You see here, I'm really happy that I've created these cards because they really look like MTG cards. And here, I mean, I can't even say which one is my favorite. I just really like both of them. Now this card is also double-sided. Right there on the back we've got Mount Sinai, and here we've got Sejiri Glacier. This is certainly one of my favorite cards here from this deck. Then here we've got another card that has also another striking similarity with this other card here. Divination. You see we've got the same colors and pretty much the same artwork on these 2 cards. They also have the same effect, draw 2 cards. And then here we've got Joshua, charismatic leader, and the Ark of the Covenant. Unfortunately, Moses wasn't able to complete his journey to the Promised Land. He died before the Israelites reached the Promised Land, before they reached their destination. So his role was taken up by Joshua, and Joshua eventually led the people of Israel into the Promised Land. And you can see right there, Joshua is leading the Hebrews into the Promised Land, and there you can see the Ark of the Covenant, which is supposed to contain the tablets of the 10 Commandments that were written by Moses. Now, my camera is running out of power, so we're going to be real quick. Now, I'm not going to say much here about these cards. I'm just going to place them here, and just going to show you here these cards, these final cards in the deck. This is one of the great prophets that we got in the Bible, Deborah, the prophetess. Then here we've got Samuel, the great prophet. He was the prophet who chose the first king of Israel, who was King Saul. Then after King Saul, we had King David. And here we've got David and Goliath and King David. I didn't really know that this story, David and Goliath, actually came from the Bible. You see, this card is actually double-sided. Right there we've got this artifact here, King David's Harp. I really didn't know that this story came from the Bible. I actually thought this was some ancient Greek myth or some ancient Greek legend. So that was also pretty cool to discover that this story actually comes from one of the books of the Bible. So this is King David, the second king of Israel. Then we had King Solomon, who built the Temple of Jerusalem. Here we've got a bunch of artifacts. All the artifacts here that I made for this deck, they're all pretty much like god creatures. Here we've got stone idol of Asherah, who was a god. And here we've got Baal, god of Assyrians. Then we've got more artifacts here. The golden calf, the stone god. These cards are just amazing. I love them. The god of Jericho. This card is pretty cool. This is a rare card with trample And when this creature attacks, switch its power and toughness until end of turn. And you see it's got 2 power, but 10 toughness. Then here we've got also this other very cool card. This is the Pharaohs Palace. This is again one of my favorite spells from this deck. This card is also double-sided. And then you've got the Gods of Egypt. A legendary artifact creature with 4 power and 4 toughness, a very cool ability. Then here we've got the Queen of Sheba, which has its own special, let me see if I can find it. Where is the token? Come on, I'm running out of power here. When this creature enters the battlefield, you can create this treasure. Okay, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And here we've got 2 other creatures that are pretty cool, 2 legendary creatures. King Cyrus was the king of the Persians, and Balthasar was the king of the Babylonians. These characters are mentioned in the Bible, in the final part of the Bible, the final books of the Bible. Here we've got the Pilfering Fox and the Fox's Hideout. This fox is one of the main characters in the animated series. It's a funny character that was probably created for kids, for the entertainment of kids. This fox is really mischievous, he's always up to mischief, he's always causing some troubles, he's stealing food from the other people. It's pretty funny. We got this character in pretty much like all the episodes. Then here we've got King Adam. Now real quick here because I'm really running out of power. One True God. This is a saga. Then we've got a bunch of spells here. Tragic Fall. The Scarab God Necklace, an artifact equipment. The Egyptian Oasis. Eaten by Gold. Okay. If you want to take a good look here at the effects, just freeze the screen and take a look at the effects for these cards. Harp Lady and Attack on Jerusalem. Let me see if I can squeeze through the last cards. Here we've got the final cards in the deck, the Lands, Mount Zion, and the Temple of Jerusalem. The last 4 cards, Babylon and Thebes. And finally, the last 2 cards of the deck, the Land of Canaan and the Ravine. Yes, we have made it. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much. And please let me know about your favorite card from this deck, okay? Thank you again. Thank you for watching.